To protect yourself from vulnerabilities, use special browser. Browser A being safer than browser B is a comparison that really doesn't have much to do with the consumers who use it. Browsers are simply an execution environment for JavaScript, and as such they are all equally at risk to exploits and attacks. It is also important to know that most browser-based attacks are through browser add-ons and plugins, not the browser itself. To protect yourself, get a good antivirus program that detects online malware, as well as local infections. My business is too small to be targeted by hackers. Actually, over a half of cyber attacks happen to small businesses. They are often less prepared, and you may be complacent thinking, what are the chances they'd attack me? Most cyber attacks don't go for the big score. Instead, it's more efficient to go for the least protected. Attacking 10 poorly protected small businesses versus one better protected medium-sized business will yield a higher return of investment for the hackers. Your antivirus will always protect you. Most of you do understand that antivirus software isn't perfect. Nothing can function perfectly 100% of the time, but many of you seem to think that antivirus software is pretty effective. The truth is scarier. Antivirus is an excellent resource to help keep your PC immune to viruses on Windows, but it's nothing you should rely on completely. The last layer of defense is you. Antivirus is only as secure as the team behind the product has identified the virus. Most antivirus software doesn't even protect you against obnoxious software you don't want. Antivirus software allows obnoxious adware and spyware that inserts itself into your web browser, forcing you to use worse search engines and pushing additional advertisements onto you. It doesn't mean you should abandon antivirus completely, but antivirus should be your last but one line of defense behind other cybersecurity matters. Automatic updates always cause bugs. Automatic updates aren't as scary as they seem. Some people go out of their way to disable Windows updates and even browser updates because they are worried about things breaking. Yes, sometimes Windows updates do break things, but overall, automatic updates are good. They close security holes and keep your computer working properly. Breakages are rare. Security holes are a bigger concern. It's usually best to just enable automatic updates for your operating system, web browser, plugins, and other software, and have them stay up to date automatically. If you don't trust a company to responsibly install automatic updates, you probably shouldn't be running their software in the first place. On Windows 8 and 10, automatic updates no longer force reboots of your PC and are generally less obnoxious. Laptop battery life. Run down before charging to extend battery life. This was true on older devices. Leaving your device docked on a charger would kill the battery life, but if you have laptops, tablets and phones that are less than 5 years old, this is no longer the case. Devices with lithium-ion batteries do not suffer this fate. They can actually lose maximum battery charge if you let it down to empty level, and further, it also minimizes their lifespan. Recharging often is a safer option in this case. You should empty the recycle bin for more speed. This is another of those tips that made sense 10 years ago, but is outdated now. Emptying the recycle bin will obviously free up disk space, but where is the performance boost going to come from? I suppose that if you have a huge amount of data in the recycle bin and dump it and then perform a defrag, it is possible that you'll suddenly get such a well-optimized disk that there will be a noticeable difference. This presumes, of course, that you regularly create large amounts of data in the middle of the physical disk and then remove it. Unless you are constantly installing and uninstalling large applications and creating and then removing large amounts of data, emptying the recycle bin is not going to give you a noticeable speed improvement. Internet Explorer is bad. Internet Explorer is a joke. Microsoft is even replacing Internet Explorer with a new browser named Edge in Windows 10 to get away from Internet Explorer's reputation. But recent versions of Internet Explorer are actually pretty good. Internet Explorer 9 improved things dramatically, and 10th and 11th versions are even better. Modern versions of Internet Explorer support a lot of modern HTML standards found in other browsers and have speedy JavaScript engines. Codecs are required to watch videos online. There was a time when you needed codecs to watch videos online. Real Player, QuickTime, Windows Media Player, and DivX were all often necessary. Sometimes Java was used for videos, and later came Microsoft's Silverlight. Nowadays, most videos should play with either the HTML5 video feature in your browser or the Adobe Flash plugin. A few websites may still be using Microsoft Silverlight, but you don't need to install Codecs to watch videos on the web. If you do click a link on a social media or another website and are asked to install Codecs, don't. It's a trick to get you install junk you don't want on your computer. Freeware. Windows freeware sites have always been a little suspect, but many people think they are safe. As can be. While some computer users believe there is a handful of good sites that don't pose a threat to your PC, the fact is that all freeware sites are risky at best and dangerous at worst. With this in mind, be careful where you download programs and ensure you're always using reputable, licensed sources. Besides, big download sites often add their own garbage to the freeware they offer. Even the good sites host garbage-filled installers. If you're downloading from a program's official website, you'll often have a junkware pushed on you in the installer too. RAM. Modern operating systems try to use as much of your computer's RAM as possible. RAM is important for speed. More RAM means less buffering. This is true for everything from Windows, Linux and Mac OS X to Android and Apple iOS. Modern web browsers also use quite a bit of memory. When data is in RAM, your computer can access it more quickly. It makes sense to leave applications, data, temporary files and everything else in RAM, where it can speed up access times in the future. Increasing RAM will allow your computer to work a little more efficiently by reducing its dependence on its virtual memory. By doing so, you will feel like it's running faster. However, there is always a limitation for any operating system and programs for their usage of RAM. Not having enough memory can really bring your system to a halt. Adding additional RAM is typically the first port of call when it comes to upgrading your PC. And for good reason. 8GB used to be the old standard, now 16 is a common and 32GB is the sweet spot for high-end gamers and certain power users. Yet some on the internet think best to jump straight to 32GB, thinking it will maximize their performance and drastically improve their computer speed. But again, it all depends on the tasks you intend your PC to perform. Some situations where I'd recommend 32GB and above is 4K video editing, web development and 3D rendering. Think of it this way: if you don't exceed your 8GB of RAM with daily use, what uses 16 or 32GB? Consider other upgrades. SSDs, for example, can drastically lift performance when it comes to booting your PC up or starting crucial applications. Likewise, your computer experience could be drastically improved if you upgrade your 10-year-old monitor to modern and high-resolution LCD display. Of course, it is important to upgrade your RAM if you need it, but there are a host of upgrades you should be considering in order to improve your computer experience. Typing 3W is compulsory while going to websites. Originally, the internet was designed in such a way that 3W was a necessary part of website's address. However, with the way that internet works today, all you have to type is the website's domain name. You still need to include the .com part of the address for this to work. You shouldn't mix Nvidia, AMD and Intel. When it comes to building a PC, there is a persistent myth that suggests you should keep your CPUs and video cards within the same family. There is a misconception out there that you shouldn't use an AMD GPU with an Intel CPU, or that you shouldn't use an Nvidia GPU with an AMD CPU. The truth is that there is no inherent advantage to using an AMD GPU with an AMD CPU, or anything of the sort, but there is really no reason to limit yourself. Nvidia cards are compatible with AMD processors and vice versa. For example, your desired graphics card may be from a different vendor to your motherboard, and that is totally okay. These components have their own BIOS and drivers that are designed to be compatible with a wide array of system configurations. This means you can mix and match GPUs and CPUs from different hardware vendors as you please. Email attachments from friends and relatives are always safe. Most of you are smart enough to know not to open attachments from strangers, as they could contain a virus. But you're often much less safe when it comes to opening attachments from people you know and trust. Your friend's name attached to a document doesn't automatically mean the attachment is safe, or even from relatives. Sometimes they've accidentally given out their login details, and a spammer is sending emails. Take your time. Don't click on them immediately, not even out of curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat, and it may well kill your computer. If you're not sure about an attachment or a link in an email from someone you know, you can ask them about it, or you can run a quick security check on it. If you can't contact the person that sent you the email, or you're lazy enough or short of time, a good rule of thumb is to see what the file extension is. A file extension tells you what type of file the attachment is, as well as the program that can open it. And .exe is an executable file, which means it will launch a program or installer if you download it. Most inboxes tell you what the file extension is. In Gmail, you'll need to move your mouse over the attachment. Be careful, especially with the files named like .docs.exe. For example, as the person who sent the file has renamed it to make it seem like it's safe. The only part of the extension that matters is the very last part. So in the .docs.exe example, it is an executable file with an .exe extension. Defrag your drive. Defragging is a must. Defragmentation schedule. Most of you do not know that the Windows computers have a built-in defragmentation utility that automatically runs in the background by default at a predefined schedule. On modern computers, defragging is something you won't have to worry about. If you own a Windows system, for example, it will defragment itself automatically. This means you don't need to worry about purchasing that spendy defragmentation utility. Instead of buying a spendy defragmentation utility, you should probably spend on purchasing a solid-state drive and upgrade your computer. Even if the defragmentation utility would help speed up your mechanical hard drive a tiny bit, the SSD will be much faster. Yes, you could get cheap defrag utilities, but you're better off just putting that money towards an SSD. Further, many recent computers are now coming with SSD, which is in fact a flash storage that should never be defragmented. Actually, defragmenting damages the SSD. These days, you don't have to worry so much about defragging your storage device. For one, Windows has been automatically configuring itself to defrag since Vista. On OS X, Macs have a file system that automatically defragments files in a process known as HFC, or Hot File Adaptive Clustering. Here is everything you need to know about defragmenting a modern computer. You don't need to. You need to turn off your computer at night. This myth continues to be propagated through the net. While in the past shutting down PCs was a regular part of computing to help lengthen the lifespan of your parts and clear your cache, these days it is best to let your computer go to sleep when you are done using it. Putting it to sleep makes it use almost no power, and it will be ready to go immediately when you turn it on. On a typical laptop, just closing the lid should make it sleep. Even powerful desktop PCs can use low power sleep and hibernate modes. Don't forget, your PC has built-in intelligence that will cause the PC to shut down long before it overheats and damages itself or your premises. But if your computer is spontaneously rebooting, it's most likely because it is getting too hot. While it is true that your PC doesn't always need to be awake, you don't need to shut it down completely every night. While it is important to turn it off every now and again, it is completely fine to put your computer to sleep overnight. Going through a full shutdown every night and restart the next day isn't necessary at all and just wastes your time. More cores equal faster computer performance. In the world of processors, there is no more widespread myth. More cores always mean more performance, right? With 8 cores common in the market and 16 cores available with high-end processors, surely you should future-proof your rig with the processors with multiple cores.
Not so fast.
There are 2 things to consider. Firstly, consider what frequency your CPU is locked at. A 6-core processor that is only clocked at 3 GHz might offer substandard performance gains over a 4-core processor clocked at 4.5 GHz. Ultimately, it depends what your application is optimized for. Not all applications are well optimized for multiple cores, and in cases such as this, a CPU that has a high clock frequency may perform better. It is also important to know that a processor's advertised boost clock frequency doesn't necessarily apply to all cores simultaneously. In fact, in most cases when a processor boosts as a result of being instructed to complete an intensive task, it is generally only a single core that is clocking up to the task. If your computing consists mostly of emails, web browsing and light gaming, a 4-core processor with a clock speed of at least 3 GHz will be more than suitable. Formatting hard drive minimizes its lifespan. It is again one of the popular myths. Formatting hard drive is not more than deletion of data, and so formatting it numbers of times doesn't make any difference to its lifespan. You can format it as many times as you want. Relax. Anything you delete from your hard drive is gone forever. While moving documents to the trash may remove them from your folders, the data itself is preserved in the hard drive of the computer. You have to remember that even if the files are deleted from the recycle bin, there are a number of software programs by which you can gather them back very easily. Magnet for data erasure. When you delete data, the visible traces of its existence might vanish. But the way data storage works, the actual data remains until it is overwritten. To actually erase your data, some suggest using a magnet. This idea would work great if we were still using floppy disks. But with modern HDDs or flash storage devices, a magnet is a rather ineffective way of destroying data. Overclocking. If you don't know what overclocking is, I'll remind you. Simply, overclocking is the action of increasing a component's clock rate, running it at a higher speed than it was designed to run. Increasing a component's clock rate causes it to perform more operations per second, but it also produces additional heat. Overclocking can help squeeze more performance out of your components, but they'll often need additional cooling and care. The assumption that overclocking is bad lies in the fact that you're running a component beyond what it was built and validated for. If your processor stock speed is 5 GHz, then overclocking it to 5.8 GHz or 6 GHz is surely putting undue stress on it, right? Not always. Intel and AMD sell more budget-priced processors than they do high-end CPUs. It doesn't work out that Intel and AMD produce the exact number of higher speed and lower chips. They need to meet demand at every gigahertz rating. The fact is that they take processors that might be capable of running faster and download them. The same thing applies to graphics card and RAM. What this means is a lower clocked part might be capable of safely running at a much higher speed, but it's been gimped at the factory to satisfy market demand. It takes some research, and there are several overclocking forums around the web that can help you figure it out. Intel and AMD know that overclocking is something you want to do, which is why they have unlocked processors. Intel designates them with a K, and AMD labels them as Black Edition. Knowing what you are doing is important to a safe and successful overclock. Though there are various safeguards that make it difficult to fry a component, it can still happen with a probability of 90%.